Welcome to the Printer Prop Shop. I'm Michael. Hey, welcome back, guys. I know I took a little break there for a while. I appreciate you being patient. As you saw, we've got Kenobi's Viewfinder today. And it's not quite as advanced as what I showed in the little opening there, but a little editing trick, as you probably know. I do hope to go and incorporate these into a little bit more shorts here as my channel progresses. So it kind of shows you that you can use it as a prop in your short film, or maybe you're doing a feature film, who knows. So without further ado, here it is. And once again, it is a Mystery Maker design, as you can see right here. He did include the screen, a picture of the screen as well, as you can see right now. Marco should be ecstatic with his design here. With the functional buttons, as far as the design going together, I used FDM and resin for the buttons and some of the other little key pieces, and FDM for the rest of the actual body. I did put in a piece of plexiglass over the top. I just thought it gave a little bit better kind of aspect for the whole thing, and put in the picture that he provided, which I thought was really cool anyway. Maybe eventually I'll go back in and do some lighting and things like that. I would kind of like to have lit up plexiglass for the screen or something like that. But without further ado, here's how I did it. So as I usually do, I usually show his artwork here because he works really hard on the artwork, and detailed instructions, what you should use, and a couple of different things, including the screen decal that you can print out. Now, I did do the option without the centerpiece down at the bottom there, and I printed these to where the front face and the bottom face would be facing the bed. So I'm going to emphasize here on enabling ironing. Ironing without ironing on, it's taken me about 12 hours. If I go and turn on ironing, it's going to take just over 15 hours. So it's going to save you a lot of time. If you're going to do some work on the front anyway, you might as well just turn off ironing, because all it's going to do is iron pieces that people aren't going to see anyway, and that you're not even going to work on. So it doesn't make much sense. And I did have some gaps, but I was able to fill those in. But most of the time, if you're printing down on the bed, you're not going to have to worry about gaps so much. And as you can see there, it's almost 16 hours. So it saved me about 4 hours. Now, like I said, I did do some pieces in resin here. That little front trim piece that goes on the actual casing I did. And that took me a couple tries because I did scale it back a bit the first time. And I scaled it too much. So be cautious of your scaling. The rest of the pieces came out really well. I would suggest, if you're doing the rivets in resin, to print out more rivets than you need, because a couple of them just didn't come out very well. And I needed minimal support as well, so that's what I'm kind of emphasizing there. Now I was on to sanding. Sanding didn't take an awful long time. Reason being is because, like I said, I printed it facing the bed, so it was relatively flat. And I will say the pieces that I had gaps in were going to be covered by resin pieces anyway, as you can see around the buttons. If you look really close, you can see gaps where the filament just didn't meet for some odd reason. But it wasn't a huge deal because it's going to have a cover piece on it anyway. So that was why I didn't really worry too much about that. And after I got my actual FDM sanded, I actually moved on to the resin and gave it a decent sanding. Again, resin, I'll tell you, it just doesn't take a whole lot of sanding. I'm actually using really rough sandpaper, which is probably not good for it. But I was going to wet sand it anyway after primer, so it didn't really make too big of a deal. From there, I went ahead and did some test fits on my pieces just to make sure they fit, and then went ahead and just popped them together slightly, and then glued what I could, just so it'd hold in place until I could glue underneath. And really, I just used Gorilla Glue, as you kind of see in the corner there, that gel form, and it's still holding right now, so it works really well. Now, I thought, what better thing to use than just some screws I had laying around to actually connect the back or the bottom to the top. And even if you were to turn this over, it's going to give that look of machined, because this is going to have screws in it most likely, even if it was made out of metal. So, and the screw holes were already in there, and I praise Marco for that. It came out really well. From there, once I got my pieces together and that one little trim piece down at the bottom glued in, I went ahead and used my filler primer and just started coating it with some filler primer. I did 2 coats actually. I would sand in between and then did a second coat. And filler primer, as you know, you can pick up at Lowe's, Home Depot, anything like that. Now, along with that trim piece, I did have to go and reprint the buttons. The buttons didn't come out all that well, but fortunately, the pieces that didn't come out well was the bottom parts of the pieces, and you weren't going to see them anyway, and they didn't really have any problem with functionality because I am doing the functional buttons. So the only thing that it took was some sanding, and then after that, once I got them actually fit into the holes, I actually put those trim pieces on that covered any of those gaps that I had. Luckily, those trim pieces were already on there, so I didn't really have to do any kind of filling or anything like that. And then the large button, for some odd reason, it only fit one certain direction, and I had to sand down the one side. I think it's because of the bolt hole, if I remember right, where the screw hole that it screws into, it was just a little close. Again, didn't have any problem with functionality, just took a little bit more work. That's it. Marco did provide the screen holder. Now again too, when I did this, I put in the screen, and then I actually also put in a piece of plexiglass for the screen, and it all fit together just fine. Now after my primer, I did notice that once I got the trim pieces on, I had put on all the trim pieces and prime it again, and it filled in some of them holes. Now if you get that hardware kit that I always share, it's got a drill with some drill bits in it, and you can drill those right out, and it's got a bunch of drill bits that comes with it. From there, it was on to paint, and I did start with an actual silver coat of paint on my airbrush kit, and then I moved into some gunmetal, but I wanted that silver coat to kind of be my base coat. And then as you can see, I'm not even doing a full coverage. You can see spots still from where I sanded down, but after the and then I did do the buttons as well in that silver, and I left the buttons in silver, if you notice, on the finished product. The reason I did that, I wanted them to stand out a little bit compared to everything else, and I think it proved that it does make it stand out. From there, I actually started using just a primer coat. It's just a standard primer, and I started going over all those trim pieces that are in gray. That was kind of the closest thing that I had to a gray. So with that, I just started going over it. I used a really fine nozzle on it so that I could get into those fine details. I still had some overspray, but I was going to go back over it with the gunmetal anyway. And as you can see here, I'm going into the gunmetal, and it's starting to be a little bit more of a darker look compared to everything else. And as you can tell, like that spot I was pointing out earlier, that gunmetal is starting to cover it. Now I did end up going back over my gray pieces because there was some overspray, and I wanted it to get a little bit finer. The reason is I used a larger nozzle to do the gunmetal, and it was kind of my own mistake. I should have done a little bit finer nozzle instead of going for spray. But I did end up doing some black first around those trim pieces, and I did add on those rivets in the meantime, and did the black on the little vents on the top there on each side. And I was just doing a little bit of shading before I went back over with the gray, and the gray really made it stand out. It was really well planned out as far as Marco's designs go. I don't think I would have came up with the gray myself. I probably would have just done the whole thing in silver and black with some shading, and there wouldn't have been any contrast. Now I did want some of that trim or those little accent pieces down at the bottom. I'm guessing it's some kind of dial or something, but I wanted those to stand out. And what I kind of came up with was, and unfortunately my hand is covering most of this, I'm sorry about that, but I actually dyed some UV resin and put it in the center. I did use some clear resin for the outer ring, so that it would stand out a little bit more. So in Marco's instructions, he used, or he suggested using pencil springs. So little hack, if you're looking for mechanical pencils, Dollar General. Yeah, Dollar General. $1 for 7 pencils. So don't go on Amazon and buying bulk springs. Just go to Dollar General and buy 7 mechanical pencils, because that's what he suggests anyway. So we're gonna rip them open and see what we got. I need, looks like 1, 2, I could actually probably get away with 4. I got my little hand drill here. I used an 11/64, so let's see if that'll work as far as the size here. And yeah, that's gonna work just fine. And so, as you can tell, my bottom pieces turned out really horrible when they printed. So, as you can see, they're not exactly flat. So I'm gonna go ahead and sand those up before I install anything. But I just want to take a minute and show you the kind of mechanical portion for if you use the functional buttons. From there, it was just a matter of sanding down those buttons just to actually get a flat piece on the bottom, because like I said, they didn't turn out too well on the bottom. So once I got those sanded, it was good to go, and I was able to move into the actual screen. Now, I actually had some plexiglass laying around, and I had already printed off just kind of a test piece for the actual screen itself. So I used that as my little tracing pattern there to get as much out of this plexiglass as I could. And this was prior to doing anything that would, because when you do plexiglass, you want to make sure that you put tape on it, or else it's going to crack and fray and all that stuff. So I just wanted a kind of a rough estimate before I laid down my tape on where I should put my tape. Now, once I got my pattern on there and I knew how much I needed to tape, I went ahead and just grabbed some masking tape and taped it up as best I could, and covering that full pattern so that I could cut through it. And I did tape front and back. From there, it was just a matter of taking that template I already had and just redoing my little tracing element there and pulling out my Dremel. Now, I am going to warn you, I don't use a fiberglass saw piece on this. I use an actual saw piece that you can get from Dremel. Now, wear safety glasses. Regardless if you wear regular glasses, the reason I say that is safety glasses will go all around your eyes, whereas your regular glasses will have bits come around your glasses. And this stuff will fly everywhere, so be safe. After that, it was just a matter of putting it all together. I used glue to go and hold in those springs. I kept my tape on my plexiglass until I was right ready to go and put it in there. And I put the picture, cut it out, and put it on top of that piece you can see right there. Put the plexiglass on top, and then screwed the bottom to it, and it was all done. So guys, that's how I did it. Some Dollar Tree pencils. Remember that. Don't buy in bulk. You can get those pencils, 7 of them, for $1. So you got 7 springs. If you spent $10, you get 10 packs. You got 70 springs. I was finding on Amazon for $12 to $15 for bulk springs, and it just didn't really seem worth it. So go out and make something. Go out and film something, produce something, do something. Thanks for watching, and have a great day. We'll see you next time.